Welcome back, students. In the fourth unit, that is project scheduling. In some last lectures, we have seen what is actually the scheduling of the project. What are the different processes that we are following in the scheduling of the project. In that, we have seen what is PERT, CPM, that is critical path method. After that, we have seen the time estimation regarding the project management. Regarding the particular project. After that, we have seen the determination of critical path, means how we are going to find or how we are going to determine the critical path in a particular project. That also we have seen. And time estimation also we have seen in detail. What is actually the time estimation, how the time that is regarding the project, means the time regarding to the each and every step, that is estimated. That everything we have seen in time estimation, means by estimating the times of each and every step. After the estimating each and every step's time, we can estimate the total time span that is needed for a project for the purpose of completion of the project, means from starting date to the ending date. That also we have seen in the time data estimation. Today we will see the next concept, that is measures of variability. Let us see what is measures of variability. Variability is the measure of spread of data set. The commonly used measure of variability, that is range, variance, and standard deviations. It means that measure of spread of the data, measure of spread of the data set. It is the how much data that is spread in that data set. That is nothing but a variability, and the number of different measures of variability that we are using here, that are range, variance, and standard deviation. Let us see what is actually the range. The range here, it means that the difference between the largest and the smallest measure. Whatever the measures that are spreaded regarding to that data set, the difference between the largest and smallest measure, that will give us the exactly range for the particular project, or for the particular project in the project management. The next thing is variance. What is variance? Is the mean of average of the squares of the deviation of each and every measurement from the mean. Next was standard deviation. Standard deviation, that is the square root of the variance of a set of scores. These are the different terms, they are related to the measures of variability, and these are the three measures of variability that we are using here in the project management. Let's move to the next point, that is a network cost system. Let us see what is actually the meaning of network cost system and how the cost of that network is formed or calculated. The network cost system, that was basically for the cost planning of vehicles. Okay, the costs that are measured, analyzed, and compared, and estimating the cost, means basically here we have to plan or we have to make a plan for the purpose of finding the cost of the particular vehicle or the particular project. Means in this case we are considering the project, that's why not regarding to the vehicle. Let us consider for a project the cost here that we are measuring, or we are estimating the cost here, that is by measured, analyzing, and comparing the estimating cost. Okay, through network, the relationship that is purely highlighted, showing the activities and events. The network system that can be proceeded backward or forward with events occurring either in preceding or succeeding. The project management must not be in repetition. That is what told here regarding to the network cost. That is it may be backward or forward with different events occurring either in preceding or forwarding. It means that whatever the network diagram we have seen, in that the task dependencies we have seen in the last lecture. What are the different task dependencies? Regarding to that, considering the task dependencies, means if we want to find out the total cost of a network, then we will ultimately find out the network dependencies, and depending on that, whatever the cost of that particular network, that we will find by the backward preceding or forward preceding, and by these events we will get the total network cost of the particular project. This was all about the network cost system. Now let's move to the next point, that is resource considerations in project. Let us see first what is actually the different resources that we are considering in the project. As we have seen in one of the lecture, what is actually the meaning of resources in the project management? Whatever the things that are needed for the completion of project, either it can be technical resources, it can be manpower, it can be money, it can be different things that are needed for a project. They are called as the resources. Let us see what are the resources. Resources can be people, equipment, place, money, or anything else that you need in order to do all the activities that you have planned for that particular project. Means it can be money, place, or anything else. It can be equipments also. Why we need the different people? Because for the purpose of completing the different steps or different tasks, we need different people. They can also be called as the resources. Different equipment for the purpose of processing the data, for the purpose of making the different steps for the completing, that can be also considered as the resources. Money or anything else that we are considering for the purpose of completing the activities, they can be called as the resources. Here every activity in your activity list that needs to have different resources there that are assigned to it. Okay, whatever the activity that I am doing in a particular step, that a particular activity should be assigning, means it should be having the list of resources that are needed for the purpose of completing that activity or performing the different tasks regarding that activity. Okay, before you are assigning the resources to the project, you need to know their availabilities. Okay, if I am assigning different process and that different resources, and that resources are not available, then there will be delay in the project completion. In that case, it will be a bad effect on the project completion. That's why before assigning that different resources to the different task or different people, you have to first find out all the information that is needed for the project and the resources availability for that particular project. When they are available to you and the conditions of their availability, that also we have to check here. Here again, you should not forget one more thing, that some resources like circumstances or training rooms that have to be scheduled in advance. Okay, because before starting the actual project, you have to consider the training rooms also. You have to give different training to the peoples, and then that might be only available in certain times also. You will need to know that before you can finish the planning of your project, you are starting to plan in any of month. Let us consider in the January, the June is a wedding. It is harder to plan that one in a December, because the wedding halls are all booked up in advance also. This is one of the example that you can consider. Means you can consider the example of wedding in that month of June. You have to book the venue, or you have to book the hall in advance, because that can be booked. Just like that, before the actually starting the project, you have to just make the planning, and before making planning, you have to make sure that all the resources that are needed for the project, they are easily available at that place. Okay, this is that is the clearly a resource constraint. Okay, you can call it as a resource constraint. You will also need the activity list that you have created earlier, and you will need to know how your organizations typically they are handling the different resources. Once you have got the handles on the different things, you are set up with the resources estimation. Means if you know what are the different resources needed and how they can be handled, you can estimate the resources. Just like you have estimated the time, you have to estimate the resources. Means you have to find out the resources from where you can collect and from what time you can collect, and when there will be availability. Means before starting that project, all these things you have to consider here. That is what called as the resource considerations in the project management. Here, in resource consideration, the goal of activities resource estimating is to assign the different resources to each and every activity in that activity list. Let us consider five tools and different techniques for the purpose of estimating the activity resources. First, you have to consider here the expert judgment. Means by bringing an expert who have done this sort of work before and getting their opinions, and you can get something from their experiences. You can know, you can have the knowledge about the resources they are needed for the same project. Means they have undergone the same project in the past. That's why they can share their experiences, they can share their opinions, and you can have the list of list of resources that are needed for in that particular step in a project. That is how you can have an expert judgment. The next thing you can do is alternative analysis. In that, it means that by considering the several different options for how you can assign the resources. Okay, this thing includes that varying the number of resources as well as kind of resources you are using here. Many times there may be more than one way for the purpose of accomplishing an activity, and alternative analysis that will help in deciding the among the different possibilities. That is how alternative analysis you can do for the purpose of resource considerations. Next thing you can have is published estimating data. Whatever the documentation is done regarding the project, you can refer to the you can refer the past documentation documents of the different project, and by that published documents you can have the list of resources that are needed for the project. It means that published estimation data, it is something that project managers in a lot of industries use to help them figure out how many resources they are needed here. Okay, they rely on the articles, books, journals, and different periodicals that collect and analyze and publish their data for the purpose of other people's projects. Means that data can be used here, that can be analyzed, that can be used, and you can have a proper list of proper list of resources here for your project. That is how you can use the published estimating data for your resource list. Next thing you can consider is project management software. It is also one of the best options for the purpose of getting the everything data in that software. Once you have saved everything, whenever you need in the future, whenever in future you need the same data, means if you have a similar project or some similar project in some constraint, then also you can have at least an idea about the resources. That's why project management software is also very much important. Okay, sorry, it is very much advantageous for this purpose for getting the different resources. Here, project management software such as Microsoft project that will often have different features. They are designed to help the people's managers. They are estimating the different resources they are needed and the constraint, and finding the best combination of assignments for the project. Means if you have not saved anything data, or if you do not have anything in that project management software, even though you can that particular project management software will give you a particular help for the purpose of estimating the list of that different resources. This is how that software will be very much useful for you for the purpose of getting the resources of the particular project. The next thing you can consider is bottom up estimating. In this, it means that breaking down complex activities into pieces of working out and resources assignment for each and every piece. Means whatever, as we have seen before, whatever the project, we are breaking the project in number of steps. Like that, here bottom up estimating. Here also we have to make the different pieces of complex activities, not each and every activities. If the activities are easy, you can easily perform that activities, or you can easily perform that steps. When the particular activity that is somewhat complex, and you cannot have that activity to be completed, complex activity, then you can break down that activity into number of pieces. Okay, and after the pieces you can have the list of resources for each and every piece, and you can combine all the pieces and you can get what is actually needed here. Okay, it is a process of estimating here individual activity resources, their need or the cost, and then adding this different things together to come up with the total estimation. Bottom up estimating, it is a very accurate measure of estimating. It is provided that estimates at the schedule activity level, they are accurate. Okay, means however it takes a considerable amount of time to perform the bottom up estimating, because every activity that must be assessed and estimated accurately, that is to be included in the bottom up calculations. The smaller and the more detailed the activity, the greater the accuracy and cost of this technique is here. This is how these are the five steps or five things that you can consider, or five tools you can call it as. You can consider techniques also, you can call it as five techniques for the purpose of estimating the different activity resources, and you can get with the proper list of resources here for your project. Okay, this was the different considerations we have to consider while making the list of resources or while collecting the different resources of the for that particular project. Now let's move to the next point, that is resource allocation. What is actually the resource allocation that we will see now? Resource allocation is a critical part of managing any project. If you have a task, project or program to accomplish, you're going to need the different resources. They are allocated to your project for the purpose of helping you to get it done. Okay, you will need the skill professional, that is create different creative persons, different writers, different developers, different construction workers, different tools you also need here, that is software, hardware and meeting rooms and time to get everything done. Okay, in virtually every type of industry, effective resource allocation is key to delivering the projects on time and on budget. This is what the resource allocation is. In short, we can say that the resource allocation, that is a process of assigning and managing assets in a manner that supports an organizational strategic goal. Okay, the resource allocation here includes the managing tangible assets such as hardware to make the best use of software asset. Let us see, we can call it as a human capitals. Resource allocation here involves balancing competing needs and prioritize and determining the most effective courses of actions in order to maximize the effective use of limited resources again and gain in the best return of the investment. This is what we are called as the resource allocation, means a different process of assigning and managing the assets in manner that supports an organizational strategic goal, that we can call it as a resource allocation. In practicing resource allocation, organizations must first establish their desired end goals such as increased revenue, improved productivity, and better brand recognition. This is what is the resource allocation. Let us see what the resource allocation and how does actually the resource allocation work. Virtually, we can say that every project or product launch or website makeover and anything else an organization might create or update needs resource allocated here. Okay, after all, without the right resources, how would anything get it done? Let us see first the different basic types of resources you might need. At the time of defining the different resources, we have seen what are the different resources can be people, that can be different kits, or that can be different technical things, or that can be money, or that can be time, anything that can be considered here as a resources. Let us see people here. The people are the resources, that can be writers, editors, or user experiences also. They can be designers also, art directors, account people, traffic manager, freelancers, or contact resources, developers, testers. Everything under this concept comes as a people, or comes as a people resources who we are considering they are working with the proper skills for the purpose of completing their project or for the purpose of making the different activities regarding the project. Next resource we can consider is time. This is the total amount of time. You can consider days, week, months and years also. You have to bring your project over the finish line, means starting time to ending time, whatever we are considering here, that can be considered as a resource time. While the end date of the project, it may already be decided, you can divide the increments or different times in the period for the purpose of ensuring that project that stays on the track. Means after each and every step, you have to properly check the different things regarding to that activity, means if that particular activity is done within the given budget and given time or not. This is how you can find out if it is going out of the track or on the track. That is what the time resource. Next thing is tools and capitals. If your project team needs a dedicated war room, so let us say we can call it as a access to specific equipment to create the specific features or product, this will have to be planned for during the resource allocation phase of the project management and allocated properly. Means different things also you can consider here for the purpose of tools. It means that the different tools we can have that are needed for the purpose of different works or different specific task. For that purpose of doing that specific task, whatever the tools that are needed, that also also can be considered as a resource for the project. Now let us see who actually is involved in the allocation of the resources. Okay, on the most granular level, a project or a program manager is responsible for resource allocation. Okay, sorry, the project manager needs to access what types of people, time and tools that will be needed throughout a project schedule. However, in most organizations, project managers, they don't have resource staff, okay, who report to them. Okay, they need to work with the department heads in department, IT, creative, content and others who direct reports will be asked to contribute to the project. Sorry. Here, some of the companies and agencies, they have traffic or resource management. Okay, these management is having a traffic or resource manager who can take a high level view on who is which department is going what during the time frame that is a questions. That person would act as a go between with the department head, the person who is going to work the actual manager. Okay, the project manager to help the coordinate allocation of the different resources. Here in smaller organization, a project manager might speak informally with a potential resource also, let's say a copywriter, and say how does your work look next work. Okay, who got a request for 8 to 10 hours of copyright and editing 4 web pages. The writer could say if he or she had time available, then the project manager would have to get formal approval from the manager, the marks, the resourcing in the company's tracker. Occasionally, over the course of long projects where the creative people are working closely with the clients or internal stakeholders, a creative resource that might be asked for by name. If a project needs a mini campaign of say banner, ads and a client work, the specific writer have skill in that area. The clients might request that specific writer for the purpose of allocating the different things to the project. Whether that can be recommended or it depends upon the resources they are coming here for the purpose of commitments and other business factors. The project manager that would typically have the final say over which the resources are allocated to the project. In short, sorry, we can say that resource allocation is a process of assigning and scheduling the available resources in most of the effective and economical manner. The projects that will always need resources and resources are scarce. Okay, the task therefore that lies with the project managers for the purpose of determining the proper timing of those resources with the project schedule. For actual implementation of the project, different resources they are required here. They include main, material, machines, money and also space, that is without which the implementation of any project that cannot be done. Here, main include the planners, designers, specialist persons, supervisory staff or senior levels of staff who are working here with their skills. One thing we can say that here the resources, especially in case of manpower, they are limited, and it is necessary that the person in charge of execution or the manager has to prepare a resource analysis report which may enable him to put best use of his hand. There will be peaks and valleys in the form of required resources, and the manager that can try to level out this with the help of resource analysis report. The equipments of a particular type of resources, for example mason or carpenter or unskilled labor, over the complete period that has to be known. A graph that is plotted for the requirement of resources against the period of requirement, and this is known as resource uses profile, or you can call it as a histogram also. A histogram that will reveal the non-uniform demand over the project duration very clearly. The managers that has definite ability or definite availability of these resources, and he has to plan the requirement of the resources over different periods of execution of the project. Therefore, some of the information and alternatives we can say here is the total requirement of resources over its duration is given by the histogram. If the available resources they are insufficient, it will result in delay in completion of the project. he has to decide that best allocation of available resources over the entire period of project, so that the completion period of the project is extended by the minimum duration. If the project has to be completed in a fixed period, how best that can be available resources that can be utilized for the purpose of achieving the different goals. In such a situation, it is necessary to have a proper resource scheduling to achieve any one of the different objectives. That is, if the project duration is fixed, to level or smoothen the resource demand in such manner that peaks the valleys in the demand or that are avoidable. Okay, you can avoid that as far as possible by suitable spacing the different activities and uniform amount of quality of the resources. Thus you can say the required uniform resources in the form of manpower or any other is made available. It is called as unlimited resources available. It is called as resource smoothing. In detail, we can say resource smoothing, that is one of the project management tools that is used in the resource optimization technique. It is a technique which adjusts the activities of the schedule model so that all the requirement for the resources that do not go beyond the predefined resource limit. Basically here it is an action of adjusting the activities in accordance with the resource limited. It is used when the time constraint takes important priority in project planning. Resource smoothing, the objective of this project management tool is to complete the work or the activity within the required date and the time. Okay, avoiding the peaks and throughs or the resource demands. A smooth resource profile is usually achieved by delaying the some task or the work. It will reduce the flexibility of the schedule when it comes to the dealing with the delays, but it is very cost effective in managing and using the resources. While resource leveling, it is the action of adjusting the project start and finish date based on the resource availability or the constraint, which in turn will balances the supply and demand. Resource leveling is used when the limits on the availability of the resources, that is paramount. It is simply answer the question with the resource available when the work will be finished. Whatever the answer of the question there will be, that is called as a resource leveling. Resource leveling, it is aimed at increasing efficiency when undertaking the different project by utilizing the resources they are available at the hand, and proper resources leveling saves the heavy expenditure of the resources. Leveling of the resources will help an organization to make use of the available resources to the maximum. The idea behind the resource leveling is to reduce the wastage of resources, that is, to stop over allocation of resources. The project managers that will identify time that is unused by a resource and that will take measures to prevent it on making an advantage of it. By the conflicts of the resource, there can be number of disadvantages that an organization have to suffer. That can be delay in certain task that is being completed, okay, due to the different conflicts they are arising in the resources. Difficulty in assigning a different resources to different people. Unable to change the task dependencies, because if whatever the resources needed for one task, they are not we are not getting that on time, there are some of the conflict of that resources, then whatever the task that is dependent on that particular task, there will be a problem in the task dependencies for the purpose of completing the next task also. For the purpose of removing the certain task and adding the more tasks, that there will also be some of the problems here, and overall delays and budget overruns of the project will also be done due to the conflicts in the resources. There are some of the resource leveling techniques. The critical path is a common type of technique that is used by a project managers when it comes to the resource leveling. The critical path that represents for both the longest and the shortest time duration path in the network diagram for the purpose of completing the project. However, apart from this, a widely used critical path concept, project managers use fast tracking and crashing if things get out of the hand. In the fast tracking, this performs the critical path task, and this technique is it requires the time. The prominent feature of the technique is that although the work is completed for the moment, it is possibility of rework is higher.
And crashing technique, it refers to assigning the resources in addition to existing resources to get work done faster, associated with the additional costs such as labor, equipment, and a number of costs. This is how we have seen the resource allocation and everything regarding the resource considerations. Also we have seen before resource allocation, and after that we have seen everything regarding to the resource allocation, how resource allocation is done, who is the person responsible for the resource allocation, and what are the terms related to that. We have seen histogram. After that resource smoothing, also resource leveling, what is the need of resource leveling, and different techniques regarding the resource leveling also we have seen in this particular lecture. Before that we have seen network cost system and measures of variability. What is actually the meaning of variability, and what are the different three types of measures of variability, that is range, variance, and standard deviation. We have seen the respective definitions of all these three terms, and after that network cost system also we have seen what is actually the costing of a system, and what is actually costing of a network. Costing of a particular step is different, and costing of total network, that is also different. That everything we have seen in this lecture. Thank you.